and welcome to another edition of Citizens Movement Radio News. Today is Tuesday, the 28th of October 2025. I'm Ketue Chuma, ready to bring you the latest news and updates. Here are today's headlines on Citizens Movement Radio News. A night of long knives in Harare as ZANU-PF resort to arson attacks on opposition. Opposition, war veterans and civil society declare war on Mnangagwa, vow to stop 2030 agenda. President Chamisa urges youth to take a leaf from Morocco uprising. Now let's take a look at our stories in detail. In a typical ZANU-PF fascist fashion, suspected state agent last night gutted Safe's Trust with fire, a venue where a coalition of citizens wanted to hold a press conference denouncing 2030 agenda. According to the owner of Safe's Trust, Dr. Ipo Mandaza, a common room where press conferences are usually held was targeted by arsonists in the dead of the night. He also said the main gate to the area was bundled with big chains and locked. In another arson attack in Highfields, a house belonging to opposition member Gift Mungwende was also set on fire last night. Our CMR reporter sent in this latest update.
My name is Langton Mwanaka, reporting for CMR. This morning, the world woke up to news that the SAPS Trust venue for the press conference was petrol-bombed by thugs who did not want the opposition and civic society leaders to speak to citizens on how they have united in a non-partisan manner in an effort to stop Mr. Mnangagwa's unconstitutional 2030 agenda. Let's hear some of the leaders: Tendai Biti, Job Sikala, Munyaradze Gwisai, Jacob Ngaruvume, and Ipo Mandaza speaking.
So the message that we want to send to our people and to the patriots who are here is that your message has been heard. You have shown that you shall not be intimidated. The people shall defend democracy and constitution and the constitution. And so this is what we're doing. We will therefore be proceeding. We are announcing in due course measures that will be done to go forward and so forth. Perhaps my colleague, Comrade Job, might say a word or two.
Completely that you have seen how, we have been disrupted today. They have been hunting down and following us wherever we have been. We went to our lawyer, Agents Gumbo, to give him instructions to the effect that we must be allowed to proceed with our press conference. But they came and besieged the law firm of Agents Gumbo that were not supposed to be and to be allowed to gather at any moment. And also, as you have all witnessed since morning, that there was a terrorist attack at our intended venue here at SAPS Trust, which is owned by Professor Ipo Mandaza, who is with us here. It shows the state of the national panic. As we are speaking here and we are gathered here, you can see the riot police officers are now approaching here, demonstrating that the dictatorship is in panic. So Zimbabweans, don't panic. Very soon we are going to announce the next course of action. After this, we have heard that they've done the same in Bulawayo, but don't panic. The next way forward is going to come. Over to you, Comrade David.
Yeah, just to say that thank you for everyone who came. Very sorry to Dr. Mandaza in the arson. Very sorry to Gilbert Mbrende in the arson that took place at his house. This is a new process, a united process of concerned citizens against the mutilation of our constitution, against the vandalization of our constitution. It's a non-partisan, non-political effort to defend the constitution. So we are uniting everyone to move forward to defend the constitution, the constitutionalism, the values of the liberation struggle, and the values of our own democratic struggle with people like the great Morgan Tsvangirai and the great Gibson Sibanda. So we will tell you in due course our next course of action, but we want to thank you for your patience.
Over to you, Comrade Government.
Yeah, thank you very much, members of the press. To my brother here, Professor Ipo Mandaza, we are so sorry for what happened, but this won't be a deterrent in terms of our agenda as the people of Zimbabwe. We are united against the 2030 nonsense. We are not at all going to accept it. And this is a statement. The reason why the regime is panicking is because now, even as democratic forces, we have found each other. We are coalescing and we are brought together by a common purpose to oppose the mutilation of our constitution. And that is not going to change. So we'll stay in touch with you all, and we are so determined to move forward so that we stop this nonsense. So thank you so much, and we really appreciate your support. Thank you so much.
Over to you, Professor Bomandaza.
Sure.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I'm sorry that it has come to this, but then it's not surprising at all. And what's amazing now is the correlation between what happened just after midnight, the arson, the abduction of the security guard, who I'm glad to say he's survived, he's back. But he reports that they arrived about midnight, 2 vehicles. He says it was dark, must have been about 10 people. They bundled him into a vehicle, gagged his mouth, and he didn't see the rest, he just heard the explosions. Clearly a petrol bomb was thrown into the seminary. That was the main target. It was done by people who know the geography. And they forgot that because of the harassment we were having over the last 2 years, and including the burning down of the restaurant 2 years ago on the 10th of August, ahead of the elections, we had stopped having the seminars here. We're having it virtually. So what's happening here?
That's wonderful.
So this is what happened. It's clear that the idea was to stop this press conference taking place.
Despite the firebomb setbacks, a coalition of progressive forces, including senior opposition leaders, war veterans, civil society, church and students, have vowed to stop ZANU-PF dictator Emmerson Mnangagwa from violating the constitution by extending his term of office beyond the 2-term limits. Our CMR reporter sent in this report.
My name is Langton Mwanaka, reporting for CMR. Despite the arson attack, some of the leaders managed to hold a press conference denouncing the 2030 agenda. Let's hear Honorable Agent Gumbo speaking on behalf of this Triple C leader, Senator Jameson Timber.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. And I will speak today, number one, in my own state as a member of parliament, as a patriot and a child of the motherland. But I will also address you, fellow compatriots, on behalf of Honorable Senator Jameson Timber, who, as you all might know, was part of this panel, but could not be here today because of other commitments in the sub-Saharan region. Fellow compatriots, we gather here today with our accepted differences, but a common goal. We gather here today as patriots and sons and daughters of the motherland who accept that when there are selfish interests that threaten the very fabric of our democratic aspirations which have seen blood being shed, aspirations which have seen tears cascading down the cheeks of our mothers and fathers, our differences become just but a superficial thing. We gather here, comrades and friends, at a pivotal crossroads in our nation's history, a moment that demands our unwavering commitment to the ideals of democracy and justice. We find ourselves called upon to defend the sacred foundation of our republic, the very constitution that embodies the collective will and aspirations of our people. This is not merely a document. It is a testament of our shared journey, born out of struggle and sacrifice. In recent times, certain factions within ZANU-PF have sought to undermine this democratic cornerstone, attempting to impose their own agenda under the guise of progress. Let us be clear. These actions are not in the service of the people of Zimbabwe, but rather in the interest of a select few who view our beloved nation as their personal domain. We must rise, comrades and friends, with no division, but with unity transcending race, ethnicity, and political affiliation, to say a resounding no to these threats against our constitutional order. Our constitution, ratified by the overwhelming majority in 2013, represents a milestone in our quest for genuine democracy, a milestone we are prepared to defend with unwavering resolve. To my fellow parliamentarians and compatriots who are there at Mount Abden, we understand that today Emmerson Mnangagwa is delivering what is called a State of the Nation address, and he does so in the wake of a threat, of mutilation of our constitution. So we have declared that the State of the Nation address is what is happening here today in defense of the motherland. I call upon all members of parliament and all progressive Zimbabweans to join this noble cause. Let us employ every constitutional avenue at our disposal, guided by our conscience and our duty to the Republic. Together we can hold this march towards authoritarianism and reaffirm that Zimbabwe belongs to all its people, not just a privileged few. This is a call to action, a call to arms, not arms of weapons, but of words and deeds that reflect our commitment to justice and the rule of law. Let the fire of the revolution burn within our hearts as we unite to protect the legacy we have built and the future we envision for Zimbabwe. In my words, I say, aluta continua.
Meanwhile, ZINASU President Emmanuel Sitima had this to say.
Fellow Zimbabweans, it is youth of today. We carry the burdens, not just of yesterday, but the burdens of tomorrow and of posterity. ZANU-PF, for all its lack of direction and purpose, when it concerns the very same people it claims to represent, there has not just been an era of errors, but it has become a symbol of tired narratives, excuses, and punitive accumulation of wealth and power that has become so brazen. It is now serious, since our comrades, on the intelligence and integrity of the young people of this country. It's not just the intelligence of this country, but also as the youth of this nation. We are deeply disturbed by these unconstitutional mechanisms and we brave disregard for the law and spirit of democracy in this nation. They have seen it fit to extend the term of one so corrupt and disengaged from the everyday lived realities of the people of this country. The excuse of this extension will be seen as ridiculous and out of context, if not for the chain of ridiculous and downright dangerous decisions that the part of ZANU-PF has made in its blood history of great disservice to this nation. By reactionary noise resolution that seeks to amend the constitution does not only weaken our constitution, but weakens our future as young people of this country. Through elevating mortal beings who can be easily replaced by anyone seated next to us here, they sought to create an illusion that President Mnangagwa is some superman of a leader, when it is very obvious that this decision has less to do with the people of this country, but more to accumulate wealth and to promote the agenda of the Ghana and this nation. Comrades and friends, the reality is that as young people, we will not continue and sit idly and go down in history as the most enlightened generation, but docile in our lifetime. Comrades and friends, we are already aware of the issues that are affecting not just the few millions of youth who are not just few millions of youth, but the generation of Zimbabweans. The young people are unemployed. They are sinking in depression. They are in financial difficulties and very few opportunities. We have a shrinking civic space and disorganized tertiary education system that the system has created. A mess must be cleaned, not beyond 2028. We are of the view that a student in this country, Emerson Dambuzo Mnangagwa, has kept enough unemployed graduates. He cannot continue beyond 2028 to keep degree vendors. They have reduced our degrees into a vending certificate, and we will not allow that to happen as young people in this country. A constitution must outlive leaders and not suffer the fate of being amended to soothe the egos and comfort of power-hungry dictators. We stand ready to...
In Bulawayo, after press conference had been stopped by the police and had thugs, CMR has managed to speak to Honorable Prince Dubeko Sibanda to hear what transpired and what the way forward is.
Good afternoon, Palmer. Today, we woke up in the morning, obviously, to the violence that has been perpetrated against properties in Harare. And the culprits are known. You know, we don't need to guess. We know the culprits. And we then also went to our venue, and we realized that as early as 9 o'clock, our venue was full of police officers, was full of CIOs, was full of military personnel, and some known goons, you know, people that are known as combi drivers in Bulawayo, but who are supporters of ZANU-PF, working jointly with the security forces. And for us, that is quite worrying when security forces begin to operate together with goons and thugs, because what it means that the law and order would break down, and those people cannot be arrested by the people that they are working with. And then when we went there, we were blocked by men in civilian clothing, obviously, including those thugs and goons that I mentioned. And they told me that the press conference had been cancelled. And when I asked who had cancelled the press conference, they told me it was the state. I asked them, the state, how does a state cancel a press conference that it didn't call for? Then they told me that because you didn't seek clearance. And I asked what clearance I needed for merely a press conference, and they couldn't respond to me. I identified myself to them, and I asked them to identify themselves. They couldn't identify themselves, including a superintendent who was in uniform. You know, the fun things, the other guy who wasn't in uniform introduced himself as a Spanda, something Spanda, and the police officer as well, and I could tell that these were not correct identification. So in the end of the day, they became violent. They wanted to attack some of the team that I was working with, asking them to delete videos that they'd recorded because they felt that it will expose them. So you see, it is very sad that 25 years after independence, Zimbabweans are no longer allowed to express themselves, especially expressing themselves towards a party resolution that seems to seek to bind everyone to it, even though we are not part of it. You know, so yes, they might block us today, but look, they are not blocking what people think. People don't want Emerson Mnangagwa to extend his term of office. And the earlier they understand that, the better for this country, unless if they want this country really to turn into an orgy of violence.
CMR also spoke to student leader Kigan Mathe, who was also attending the press conference to hear his views on today's developments.
Thank you very much, Citizens Movement Radio, for having us once again here on a sad day, rather, for democracy and constitutionalism in all its concerns and manifestations. We were saddened by the tragic events that unfolded at Bulawayo Club during the press conference, which was set to address the constitutional crisis bedfelling Zimbabwe under this not so resolute resolution number 1 by the Liberation Movement, which seeks to extend the presidential term limits to beyond 2028 to 2030 rather. So we had scheduled this conference in the name of calling out the ills and the manifestation that ZANU-PF has brought to our people, the misery that it has imposed against our people, and the misery that it ought to impose through this NATO resolution, resolution number 1. We are saddened by the acts of the security agents that confiscated our press statements and forcibly removed us from our scheduled venue after a tight contestation. We urge that all security agents and state institutions must be depoliticized, because it makes no meaningful reason that a merely underpaid officer of the state prevents and sides with those that yearn to oppress them. So it is a very tragic event that unfolded at the Black Club today, and we call every progressive Zimbabwean to unite under this specific objective rather of fighting ZANU-PF to reform and compelling it to reform out of power. Thank you very much for having us, Citizens Movement Radio.
Citizens President Advocate Nelson Chamisa has hailed a Gen Z youth uprising in Morocco where protesters defied state crackdown to free up jailed colleagues. Posting on his social platforms, President Chamisa said, "Young people in Morocco inspire," in a message seemingly directed to Zimbabwean youth to reject ZANU-PF 2030 agenda. Meanwhile, opposition spokesperson Promise Mkwanazi, a former leader of the famous Tajamuka movement against Robert Mugabe's Iron Fist rule, has said the youths are the backbone of the struggle for change. Let's hear Mkwanazi speaking.
Well, we applaud and we're encouraged by the courage and bravery of the young people from Morocco. It is reminiscent of our days in the Tajamuka movement, where young people showed their power, showcased their courage, and helped abdicate the long and brutal rule of President Mugabe. We challenge the today's youth to come together and challenge Mr. Mnangagwa. We challenge the youth of Zimbabwe to unite and fight for legitimacy, fight for democracy, fight against corruption, fight for reforms in the broader democratic struggle for our people.
A senior opposition leader, Senator Jemasen Timber, has applauded renowned Apostolic Faith Church leader Paul Mwaja for refusing a donation worth around $300 from Emerson Mnangagwa's corruption poster boy, Wicknell Chivayo. Senator Timber said Apostle Mwaja's gesture of integrity is a lesson to all Zimbabweans that they must fight corruption by those calling for 2030 agenda. Let's hear him speaking.
Fellow citizens, when a 107-year-old man of faith rejects a gift of nearly $300,000 from those named in the $3.2 billion corruption scandal, it is not just an act of faith, it is an act of courage. Paul Mwaja is reported to have rejected a gift from one of the persons named in this corruption scandal. Paul Mwaja has reminded our nation that integrity cannot be bought, that no amount of wealth can cleanse money stolen from the people. His decision stands as a moral indictment of those who profit from plunder while millions live in poverty. Zimbabwe does not need an extension of corruption to 2030. It needs an awakening of conscience and the defense of our Constitution. Our Constitution is our future. We must defend it.
Civil servants have said the proposed amendments in PISMAS is meant to dilute workers' electoral power, accountability, and access to services. Trade unionist Munyaradzi Musiyiwa, who attended PISMAS General Council yesterday, told Citizens Movement Radio that the proposed amendments are bent on disregarding workers' call for transparency to pursue institutional mandates. Let's hear Musiyiwa speaking.
Yesterday, I attended a special general meeting for PISMAS, where Dr. Nyadundu was chairing a meeting which was meant to adopt a new constitution for PISMAS. Mind you, Dr. Nyadundu is the current interim manager who was appointed by the AGM on 30 November 2023, with the sole purpose of serving for only 1 year, but he kept renewing his terms by hook and crooks. He kept going on as the interim manager of Pismas, and now he has taken a step further to repeal the constitution, to wholly repeal the constitution, and come up with a new document that he calls a constitution, a document that is meant to protect him and his friends. So yesterday, Dr. Nyadundu was chairing a meeting of members, of subscribing members who were in attendance. He was choosing who should speak and who should not speak. He had planted his own members who were speaking his own language. So he managed to dribble through members and coerced them to adopt a document that is going to make sure that workers loses influence in the running of Pismas, workers loses representation in the running of Pismas. So out of 13 directors, only 3 will be coming from the workers' side. Workers have lost the electoral power through this constitution if it is not challenged. There is dilution of accountability and access. He is also suggesting that from now onwards, only 200 members will be allowed to attend AGMs and make decisions on behalf of all the subscribing members of Pismas. We need to challenge this. This is a scam that we have just witnessed. This needs to be stopped. We need to retain Pismas. Pismas was started by unions, and Pismas should remain in the hands of workers.
One of the leading voices advocating for sustainable mining and natural resources conservation, Farai Maguhu, has revealed shocking details, saying at least 10,000 graves of locals have been desecrated by the Chinese nationals countrywide. Posting on his social media platforms, the Center for Natural Resources Governance Executive Director named the Chinese mining company Sabistar as the company behind exhumations in Buera. He condemned the ZANU-PF for watering down values and dignity of locals by allowing the Chinese nationals to do as they please in the countryside. Let's hear more from him.
Yeah, the issue of desecration of graves, it's a very worrying phenomena that has been growing ever since Zimbabwe's leaders discovered mining as a source of personal enrichment. In Marange alone, one company exhumed more than 2,100 graves within a space of about 4 years to pave way for diamond mining. It's not just only the Chinese, but the Chinese, I think they're the biggest culprits because they have completely no respect for the culture of the Zimbabwean people. And the 2,100 graves I'm talking about exclude graves which completely disappeared, where the Chinese, they dug up the human remains together with the diamond ore, and they took them to the plant and they crushed them. And those remains have been lost forever. Local traditional leaders, sometimes they have to take some soil, to be symbolic of the destroyed grave and remains, and make a mock grave just to try to appease the spirit of the dead. But this is a challenge we are seeing on the rise throughout the country. Wherever the Chinese are mining, if they come across a cemetery, they dig it up. Sometimes people, it's living families divided. Sometimes they pay some gullible family members who agree to the exhumation against the will of the others. So those who are greedy, they take up the money and they allow this desecration of graves to take place. But I wonder, when you look at the geology of Zimbabwe, that almost every square mile has got a mineral there. If government makes it so easy for the miners to dig up graves whenever they come across them, I really think it's a national disaster of monumental proportions. We can't be a country that is seeking profits at the expense of our cultural values. Every nation that is great in the world is a nation that has got some values. And I think we need to respect the dead. That is a value in our culture.
92 years old Cameroon dictator Paul Biya was yet again announced as the winner of the presidential election in the West African country. Opposition presidential candidate Issa Chiroma Bakari is disputing the results, saying the polls were rigged. International news outlets say at least 2 people were shot dead by security forces yesterday following protests against election results. Back to our top story, we spoke to citizens to hear their views on arsonist attack that happened in Harare.
The junta regime is on panic mode, and this is not new. Their political tactics to intimidating fellow citizens demanding good governance, rule of law anchored on constitutionalism and integrity. The message is now clear as Zimbabwean citizens across all political divides are converging, and the message is rock solid. We now need a citizen-centered government by the people, for the people, and with the people, built on citizenocracy, a God-fearing centered government. The terrorist organization running the country is going, and it will go by and through the people's power and voices and action. We fear Fokolo, Zimbabwean fears Fokolo. We are marching forward till citizens' total victory. While the state security has been deployed to the venues to block the press conferences, we want to make it categorically clear and known that our voices won't be silenced in calling and demanding for constitutionalism. The 2030 agenda is nonsensical, and ZANU-PF is going. Nangagwa is going, corruption is going. All these thugs destroying our country need to be arrested. As young people, we have a framework to usher out the junta government. We won't tolerate our country to be eroded by these Ugandandas. The kicks of a dying horse are not new. Every regime not representing the people's will has done the same. And what happened in Madagascar is definitely and will happen in Zimbabwe. The wheels of change are now rolling fast. ZANU-PF must go. The message is simple, clear, and loud. Citizens' voices matter.
Vana veZimbabwe toda kuti tionesane zviri kuitika kuZimbabwe. Zviri kuitika kuZimbabwe zvinhu zvinoshoresa ende zvinhu zvinonyadzisa zvikuru. Tikatarisawo mune dzimwe nyika zvavanoita zvinhu zvavo kana nevagari vavo kana kuti nemaopposition vanovapikisa vanoita zvinhu zvakanaka, vanowirirana. Kana vange vaelektwa kupinda muparliament vanoita chinhu chimwe chete chokuti takuenda kunoshandira vana venyika yavo yakavasarudza. But muZimbabwe zviri kuitwa muZimbabwe hazvienderane nemutemo wenyika yedu. Zviri kuitwa muZimbabwe zviri kuitwa zvido zvemunhu, zvido zvavamunangagwa ndo zviri kuiswa mberi nema-MPs yedu atakasarudza. Ndo dambudziko ratinaro kuti zvido zvevagari vemuZimbabwe hazvisi kuremekedzwa nema-MPs yedu, hazvisi kuremekedzwa nebato reZANU-PF. Vakufokasa nokuita zvido zvavamunangagwa, zvido zvembavha dziri kuuraya nyika yeZimbabwe, zvido zvevanhu vari kuba upfumi hwenyika, zvido zvevanhu vari kuondonga upfumi hwenyika, vari kuita kuti vana vemuZimbabwe vaende kune dzimwe nyika. Ndofunga makazviona kuti almost about 42 bodies vana vakafira pasame spot nekuda kweaccident yakaitika kuLouis Richard. Inyaya yekuti vana veZimbabwe tiri kushupika tichienda mune dzimwe nyika dzevamwe kuti tinotsvagawo chokudya, tinotsvagawo chokuraramisa munhu, kuti vana vaende kuzvikoro, vana vaendewo kune dzimwe nzvimbo dzakasiyana siyana. But dambudziko rehurumende yedu havaconsider chinhu ichocho kuti maZimbabweans we are scattered all over the world.
nemhaka yeutongi hweZANU-PF. Iko zvinezvi just imagine kuti vakanopisa event yaida kuitwa press conference nana Vabiti nana Vaskala, vakanoipisa that event iyoyo, then after that police vari kuinvestigata, but police yakutora futi danho rokubloka a new venue yadzinotoda kuita press conference kuMount Pleasant. Wakubloka futi. Why makubloka kana muri mapolisa? Muri kublokera for what reason? Instead to deal with the situation yakuti ndiana apisa building, now we are dealing with a new issue yakuti why makenda pa a new venue, saka let's block it. And the police, that's not the duty of police to block munhu anenge aita press conference yake. Azisi pamutemo zviitwa nemapolisa emuZimbabwe. Saka tinoda kuzama kuti vana muZimbabwe yakwana nguva yekuti simuke, tiratidzire kunyika dzose kuti nyaya yekuti ahwa neZANU-PF yekuchinja constitution hatizi kufara nayo. Inyaya yekuti vana vemuZimbabwe tikasimuka takabatana, kuBulawayo tikasimuka takabatana, kuMasvingo tikasimuka takabatana, kwaMutare tikasimuka takabatana, tinoita chinhu chimwe chete kusanganisa neHarare yacho. Tinoita chinhu chimwe chete, tirambe zviri kutaurirwa neZANU-PF kuti vanoda kuchinja constitution wemuZimbabwe. Tinozviziva kuti ZANU-PF inotonga kubva kumajaji, inotonga kwese uko inotonga, eka ishu yacho ikatinda kukoti hatina zvatinokwanisa kuita nokuti makotsi edu akagara akakepchwa neZANU-PF. Saka vana veZimbabwe isisu ndisu tine mhinduro yevana vemuZimbabwe, ndisu tine mhinduro yeconstitution yedu, ndisu tine kodzero yekudefenda constitution yedu. Tikatadza kudefenda constitution yedu, ZANU-PF ichangoramba ichiruta, ichangoramba tichingoshaya mamedication mahospitals, ichangoramba tichishaya zvipatara zvedu zvichingoita crisis after crisis, crisis after crisis. So vana veZimbabwe, here's the time, it's a high time now in Zimbabwe. Let's stand up in numbers to demonstrate against this agenda of ZANU-PF for 2030. So that tikabatana vana vemuZimbabwe tinokunda, asi tikatadza kubatana atikunde. Nyika yedu inoitwa mamvemve takatarisa.
Zvataona izvo zvinonyadzisa izvo. Izvo zvinonyadzisa izvo. Chokwadi hachigoni kuvharidzirwa nenzira dzakaita seidzi, asi kutoita zvinhu zvakadai zvakafanana nokupisa, kuzama kudzivisa kuti chokwadi chitaurwe. Izvi zvinotowedzera kutotaridza pachena pasi rese kuti kune vanhu vari kuita zvinhu zvisiri kudiwa neruzhinji rweZimbabwe. Kuita kwakadai kunotowedzeredza kuburitsa pachena kuti vanhu vari kuita izvi vanhu vari kuziva kuti chokwadi chikataurwa zvii zvichaitika kuvanhu. Asi tine urombo, izvi zvonyadzisa, izvi zvinonyadzisa, zvinonyadzisa. Asi kunyange zvakadaro chokwadi hachigoni kudzokera kumashure, uye pfungwa dzevanhu hadzigoni kudzokera kumashure. Mhomho yeZimbabwe iri kuziya kwayakananga nekwayakatarisa. Tine urombo nezvaitika izvi, but kune rimwe side zviri kutopangidza pachena kuti simba rakakuita zvinhu izvi, kupisa nzvimbo inekudii, ndiro zvesimba razodzivisa even kuitwa kwepress conference. But kunyange zvakadaro mhuri yeZimbabwe nepasi rese pariri kuona zviitwa izvi zviri kungojekesa, zviri kubetseredza kujekesa kuti utongi huri kuziva kuti vanhu kana kuti mhomho yeZimbabwe haisi kutenderana nepfungwa dzekutyora nekukanganisa constitution yeZimbabwe. Tine urombo, asi kunyange zvakadaro chokwadi chicharamba chichingobuda pachena, uye tinoramba tichingoti pamberi nekuburitsa chokwadi pachena, uye pamberi nekuseva our constitution. No to 2030. Izvo hazviko, hatizvitarisiri. Ngatiremekedze our constitution. Tine urombo nezvese zvaitika izvi, but zviri kuwedzeredza kuburitsa pachena kuti utongi huri kuziva zvazara iko zvino mupfungwa dzevanhu. Pfungwa dzevanhu dzakazara nekudefenda our constitution. Pfungwa dzevanhu dzakazara nekuremekedza zvinobva mupfungwa dzevanhu. Tinotenda chose. Umba from Gweru.
Let's take a look at our sports news. The Zimbabwe Football Association, ZIFA, has said it is inviting applications from suitable qualified coaches for the position of head coach of the men's senior national soccer team. In a statement, ZIFA said they are looking for a data-driven coach who understands traits of the modern game. The Warriors are without a coach following the firing of German coach Michael Nies last week. To conclude our Citizens Movement Radio News, here are the headlines once again. A night of long knives in Harare as ZANU-PF resort to arson attacks on opposition. Opposition, war veterans and civil society declare war on Mnangagwa, vow to stop 2030 agenda. President Chamisa urges youths to take a leave from Morocco uprising. This is the end of our bulletin.